Long before the night Big Sam raised his gun at Lenox Lounge, Harlem had already learned how to survive men who wanted to own it. By the 1930s, Harlem was the cultural capital of Black America. Jazz clubs, writers, boxers, preachers, hustlers, and dreamers packed into a few electric square miles north of Central Park. But beneath the music and poetry was an economy built on scarcity. Jobs were limited. Banks refused loans. Police protection was selective. That vacuum gave rise to an underground system, the numbers racket. The numbers weren't just gambling. They were a community bank, a nickel here, a dime there. Millions over time. And whoever controlled the numbers controlled Harlem. For a while, that man was Stephanie St. Clair, a fearless woman known as Madam Queen. She ran her operation with ledgers, lawyers, and discipline, and she was the first to teach Harlem that power didn't have to look like brute force. One of the young men watching her closely was a sharp-faced kid from Charleston, South Carolina. His name was Ellsworth Raymond Johnson. Everyone would later call him Bumpy. Bumpy Johnson wasn't born violent. He was born observant. After moving to Harlem as a teenager, he gravitated toward numbers runners, bookkeepers, and street philosophers, men who understood systems, not just fists. By the time he reached his 20s, Bumpy had something rare in the underworld: he could fight. He could think. And he could remember faces, debts, and favors. When Dutch Schultz, the brutal Jewish mobster, muscled his way into Harlem in the early 1930s, Bumpy didn't meet him with blind violence. He studied him critically. He learned how Schultz moved money, how he intimidated rivals, how he underestimated black neighborhoods. When Schultz was assassinated in 1935, a power vacuum opened. The Italians moved fast to fill this vacuum. But one man moved faster. By the 1940s and early 1950s, the Italian Mafia, especially Lucky Luciano's circle and later Frank Costello, believed Harlem should fall under their control. On paper, they had the advantage: political influence, police protection, national syndicates. But they made a critical mistake. They thought Harlem operated like Little Italy. It didn't. Bumpy Johnson didn't rule like a don. He ruled like a mayor. When landlords tried to evict families, Bumpy intervened. When police harassed black business owners, Bumpy made calls. When young men got in trouble, Bumpy paid lawyers. Fear created obedience. Respect created loyalty. And that loyalty terrified the Mafia. Samuel Foster, known to everyone as Big Sam, came into Bumpy's orbit in 1953. He was massive, 6 feet 4 inches, over 250 pounds, built like a dockworker. But he wasn't stupid muscle. Sam had grown up poor, learned discipline in hard places, and had one trait Bumpy valued above all else: he didn't talk. Sam became Bumpy's bodyguard, driver, and shadow. If Bumpy walked into a room, Sam was already watching exits. For 5 years, Sam took bullets, broke fights, and buried friends in protection of Bumpy. And in return, Bumpy treated him like family. That's why what happened in 1958 cut so deep. By the late 1950s, the Mafia was frustrated. Harlem wasn't folding. The numbers money was still flowing through Bumpy. Political pressure wasn't working. Violence only hardened resistance. So Frank Costello convened representatives from all 5 families. The question wasn't whether Bumpy was dangerous. It was why he was untouchable. And the answer was simple: he trusted no one, except his own. So they decided to poison the root. In early 1958, Sam Foster stopped sleeping more than 3 hours at a stretch because his youngest daughter had tuberculosis. In those days, TB wasn't just illness, it was a slow death sentence. Hospitals were overcrowded. Treatment was expensive. Black families were pushed to charity wards. Every week, the doctors asked for money before offering hope. And Sam did the same math in his head. How much longer can I hold this together? He didn't talk about it much. Men like Sam didn't. But Bumpy noticed things others missed, the way Sam's attention drifted mid-conversation. One afternoon, Sam finally came to Bumpy's office above Small's Paradise. Bumpy listened. Didn't interrupt. When Sam finished, Bumpy opened a drawer and handed him $2,000. It helped. But it didn't solve much. And that's where the Italians saw daylight. On a fateful day after the conversation with Bumpy, Sam had just locked his apartment door on 132nd Street when he heard the engine right behind him. He turned slowly, instinctively shifting his weight the way men do when they expect trouble. The window came down. Tony Maroney, from the Italian Mafia, smiled, calm, clean, well-dressed. "Sam Foster," Tony said. "Big Sam. I was hoping we'd meet." Sam's hand drifted toward his waistband. "Relax," Tony said. "If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't see the car." That line alone should have sent Sam walking. But curiosity is quieter than fear. Tony talked about money like it was medicine. Then he mentioned Sam's daughter. He then walked out of the car and placed a briefcase on the car bonnet. Tony opened the briefcase, and there was $50,000 offered to him to kill Bumpy Johnson. Sam didn't touch it. But he didn't walk away either. Bumpy Johnson learned about the Cadillac before Sam even sat down that night. Because Bumpy had built a network the Mafia didn't understand. Jerome, a parking attendant with nothing to lose and everything to notice, saw the car. Wrote down the plate number. Waited until his shift ended and walked 6 blocks north. He took the back stairs to Bumpy's office. Bumpy read the number once and didn't react. He paid Jerome and sent him away. Then Bumpy did something unusual. He waited so calculatively, even when killing Sam would have been easy. Over the next 3 weeks, Bumpy watched. He noticed Sam checking his watch more often. One night, Bumpy casually asked about Sam's daughter. Sam stiffened, just for a second. That second told Bumpy everything. By the end of August, Bumpy knew Sam had taken the money. But he also knew something else. Sam wasn't greedy. He was cornered. And cornered men don't need punishment. They need to be exposed. Most gangsters would have killed Sam. Bumpy didn't. Because killing Sam would confirm Mafia power. Create a martyr. Invite another betrayal. This was why Bumpy decided to teach him a lesson. One that would echo beyond Harlem. Victor, the gunsmith in Brooklyn, had known Bumpy since the 1940s. He'd modified weapons for him, cleaned up mistakes, kept secrets. When Bumpy explained what he wanted, Victor stared at him like he'd misheard. "You wanted to fail?" Victor asked. "No," Bumpy said. "I wanted to lie." Victor understood that Bumpy wanted him to give him an empty gun. For days before September 12th, Bumpy sent Sam on an errand that couldn't be rushed. While Sam was gone, Bumpy went to Sam's apartment quietly. Illinois Gordon slipped the thin metal pick into the lock and twisted gently. The door opened without a sound. Inside, Sam's apartment was exactly what Bumpy expected: clean, orderly, almost bare. A man who lived cautiously. No photographs on the walls except one framed picture on the dresser, Sam's wife and their 2 daughters. The younger one sat in a hospital bed, smiling thinly. Bumpy didn't touch the frame. He moved straight to the bedroom. The gun was where it always was. Under the bed, inside a shoebox, wrapped in a folded shirt. A .38 special, oiled, polished, handled with care. Sam trusted this gun, trusted it the way a man trusts a chair not to break beneath him. Bumpy picked it up and felt the weight. For a second, just one, he considered not doing this. Not because he feared the outcome, but because once this happened, there was no going back. Whatever Sam chose after this moment would define him forever. Illinois Gordon broke the silence. "You sure about this?" Bumpy nodded. The dummy gun slid into the shoebox. The real one was dipped into Bumpy's coat. They left the apartment exactly as they found it. When the door closed, Bumpy stood in the hallway again, listening to the sounds of Harlem outside. Life going on. None of it knew what was coming. Waiting was always the hardest part. For the next 4 days, Bumpy didn't change his routine. Same clubs. Same meetings. Same corner table at Lenox Lounge on Friday night. And Sam stayed close. Too close. Bumpy noticed the small things, Sam's eyes never quite resting, the way he kept touching his jacket pocket, reassuring himself of something he hadn't yet lost. On Thursday night, Bumpy invited Sam to sit with him after hours. They drank in silence. Finally, Bumpy spoke. "How's your daughter?" Sam froze. She's holding on," he said. Bumpy nodded, as if he already knew. Because he did. That night, Sam barely slept. On Friday morning, Sam kissed his daughter's forehead longer than usual. Told his wife he'd be home late. Told himself he was doing this for them. By the time night fell, Sam had convinced himself the plan was already in motion. All that remained was the trigger pull. And Bumpy Johnson, sitting calmly at Lenox Lounge, let him believe it. Lenox Lounge was filled up. Jazz spilled into the street. Politics were negotiated in whispers. Harlem breathed inside those walls. Bumpy sat where he always did. Back turned. Unprotected. At 11:47 p.m. Sam moved. No one stopped him. Why would they? Time doesn't move evenly when a man is about to destroy his life. At Lenox Lounge, the band was halfway through a slow number. The trumpet lingered in the air, stretching notes longer than they should have lasted. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly near the bar. Bumpy Johnson sat exactly where he always did, corner table, back to the room, fedora resting beside his glass. 2 city councilmen leaned toward him, speaking in low voices about zoning permits and delayed construction projects. Bumpy listened, nodded, and asked the right questions. Nothing about him suggested danger. Big Sam stood near the bar. He'd had 2 drinks. Enough to steady his hands, not enough to dull his mind. His fingers brushed the inside of his jacket again and again, checking the weight of the gun, reassuring himself that it was there, that this was real, that the path he'd chosen still existed. The gun felt familiar. That comfort mattered. At 11:46 p.m. one of the councilmen laughed and slapped the table. Bumpy leaned forward slightly, his back fully exposed. Sam inhaled. This was it. He stepped away from the bar. No one moved. Why would they? Sam had stood behind Bumpy 100 times before. He was part of the furniture. Part of the protection. The last man anyone would suspect. 6 steps. 4. 2. He stopped directly behind Bumpy's chair. The room seemed to shrink around him. Sam drew the gun. For a fraction of a second, his mind tried to save him, his daughter's face, Bumpy's voice, the years of loyalty, but desperation is louder than memory. He aimed. And he pulled the trigger. Click. The sound was smaller than Sam expected. No flash. No recoil. No blood. Just a hollow click, like a door locking itself. The trumpet died mid-note. The bartender froze, a glass half raised in his hand. For a heartbeat, no one understood what they'd heard. Then Bumpy Johnson slowly lifted his cognac glass and took a sip. He set it down carefully, after which he turned back. He didn't rise from his chair. He didn't shout. He looked up at Sam the way a father looks at a child who's broken something precious. "I've been counting on you," Bumpy said. The words landed heavy. Sam's grip loosened. The gun suddenly felt wrong, lighter, useless, unfamiliar. His hand began to shake uncontrollably. For a few seconds after Bumpy spoke, no one moved. 300 people sat frozen, not because they were afraid of Sam, but because they were watching a man realize, in real time, that he had already lost. Sam tried to speak. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Bumpy stood then. Slowly. Deliberately. Not tall, not imposing, but suddenly the only person in the room who seemed fully awake. "You can put it down," Bumpy said. Sam looked at the gun in his hand as if seeing it for the first time. His fingers opened. The weapon hit the floor with a dull clatter that echoed louder than the click had. Sam's knees buckled. He didn't collapse forward. He sank straight down, like a building losing its foundation. "I didn't," he started. Bumpy raised a hand. Not to threaten. To stop him. "I know," Bumpy said. "I know why." That was worse. Sam's shoulders shook. His breath came in sharp, broken pulls. He pressed his palms to the floor, head bowed, surrounded by people who had trusted him without question. Bumpy leaned slightly closer. "I know about the doctors," he said. "I know about the hospital. I know about your daughter." Sam looked up, eyes wide, raw with disbelief. You knew," he whispered. "I knew before you decided," Bumpy said. "I knew before you convinced yourself you didn't have a choice." Bumpy reached into his jacket and removed a thick envelope. He placed it on the table where everyone could see it, then pushed it toward Sam with 2 fingers. "Open it." Sam hesitated. Then he tore it open with shaking hands. Inside were hospital statements. Receipts. Stamped forms. Paid. Every one of them. His breath caught in his throat. "There's a check in there too," Bumpy continued. 5,000. For your family. For wherever you're going next. Sam's face crumpled. But why didn't you tell me?" he choked. "Why didn't you stop me?" Bumpy's voice lowered, "Because I needed to know who you'd be when nobody was watching." Silence pressed in from every direction. "You chose their money," Bumpy said quietly. "Not because you're evil. Because you were afraid." Bumpy straightened. "Fear doesn't make you special, Sam. It just makes you dangerous." Bumpy looked around the room before speaking again. Not at Sam, at everyone else. "What you saw tonight," he said, "wasn't an attempt. It was an answer." He turned back to Sam. "You're leaving Harlem tonight," Bumpy said. "You'll take your family. You'll go somewhere far enough that nobody asks questions." Sam nodded frantically. "If I ever see you again," Bumpy continued, "or hear your name connected to this place, there won't be words. Do you understand?" "Yes," Sam said. "Yes, I understand." Bumpy leaned closer, voice dropping. "And when the Italians ask what happened here, you tell them the truth." Sam swallowed. "You tell them I knew," Bumpy said. "You tell them I let you try. And you tell them this," Bumpy paused. "They don't get a second lesson." Sam rose slowly to his feet. No one stopped him. No one spoke. He picked up the useless gun, slid it into his jacket, and walked toward the door. When it closed behind him, it felt permanent. Bumpy turned back to the room. "Now," he said, lifting his glass, "where were we?" The band hesitated, then resumed playing. Conversation returned in fragments, then waves. But everyone in Lenox Lounge understood the same thing: they hadn't just watched a man fail. They had watched power reveal itself, quietly, completely, and without bloodshed. Sam didn't run. He walked. Down Lenox Avenue, past the glow of streetlights and storefronts that suddenly felt unfamiliar. The night air was thick, heavy with the smell of smoke and fried food, the sound of laughter spilling from bars that didn't yet know what had happened inside Lenox Lounge. Every step felt borrowed. He expected someone to stop him. A hand on his shoulder. A shout. A gunshot. Nothing came. That was worse. By the time he reached his apartment, Sam's hands were shaking again. He packed in silence. Clothes first. Then documents. Then he stopped and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the shoebox where his gun used to be. The gun had betrayed him. No, it hadn't. He had. His wife watched him from the doorway, reading his face the way only someone who has lived with a man for years can. "We're leaving," Sam said. "Tonight." She didn't ask why. At dawn, a bus left the city headed west. Sam sat by the window, his daughter sleeping against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. Harlem receded behind them. And that, Sam understood, was the punishment. He was alive. But he was no longer anyone. Stories travel faster than men. By the time Sam crossed the Hudson River, the details were already shifting as they moved from mouth to mouth, the number of witnesses growing, the silence lasting longer, the look on Bumpy Johnson's face becoming harder to describe. But the core never changed. Big Sam pulled the trigger. The gun didn't fire. And Bumpy Johnson knew. In back rooms and social clubs, men stopped mid-sentence when the story reached that point. Not because it was shocking, but because it made something clear. This wasn't luck. It was preparation. That morning, messengers were sent. Calls were made from payphones. Meetings were rearranged. By early afternoon, representatives from the 5 families gathered, not in anger, but in irritation. The kind that comes when a plan collapses so completely that retaliation feels childish. Frank Costello paced. Tony Maroney sat quietly, eyes down. No one defended him. Carlo Gambino listened. That mattered. When the room went silent, Gambino finally spoke. "He let it happen," Gambino said. No one argued. He knew about the money. He knew about the gun. And he still sat there with his back turned. Someone muttered, "Or he got lucky." Gambino shook his head. "No," he said. "Luck doesn't teach lessons." The room stayed quiet. Because everyone there understood the implication. This was a man who waited for you to make mistakes and then made sure everyone saw them. Gambino exhaled slowly. "Harlem isn't worth it," he said. "Not at this price." And for the first time in a long time, the Italian mob chose restraint. Harlem woke up like it always did. Buses hissed at corners. Store owners lifted metal gates. Kids ran past brownstones with schoolbooks tucked under their arms. On the surface, nothing had changed. But underneath, something had shifted. Men who usually spoke loudly kept their voices down. At Small's Paradise, Bumpy arrived mid-morning. A few people nodded. Others looked away. Not out of fear, out of understanding. They didn't need reassurance. What happened at Lenox Lounge spoke for itself. Bumpy went upstairs to his office and closed the door. For the first time since September 12th, he was alone. In the days that followed, nothing dramatic happened. Young hustlers who'd heard the story began asking different questions, not how to get rich fast, but how to protect themselves from their own desperation. Older men nodded quietly when the story came up, recognizing something familiar. Power that doesn't need to announce itself. A week later, a small Italian operation quietly pulled out of a numbers route near 125th Street. No explanation. No confrontation. Just gone. Harlem noticed. Because the lesson wasn't about Big Sam. It was about what happens when someone stops playing checkers and waits for you to knock over your own king. After Lenox Lounge, Bumpy Johnson didn't change how he lived, and that, more than anything, confused people. Friday night still found him at Lenox Lounge. Afternoons still brought him to Small's Paradise. Politicians still stopped by quietly. So did ministers. So did men who wanted problems handled without noise. What changed was the way people approached him. They spoke more carefully and asked fewer questions. On July 7, 1968, Bumpy Johnson walked into Lenox Lounge alone. He ordered his usual drink. Sat at his usual table. The club had changed by then. Harlem had changed too. But the room still carried memory, whether people realized it or not. Bumpy lifted his glass. And his heart failed him. No signs. No last words. He died right there, in the same place where, 10 years earlier, he had faced down betrayal without lifting a hand. News spread quickly. Some called it irony. Others called it fate. Bumpy Johnson lived by control. And in the end, even death didn't get a spectacle. After Bumpy Johnson's death, Harlem did what it always does with its dead. It talked. Stories grew sharper with every telling. Details shifted. Some said Big Sam never made it out of New York. Others swore Bumpy had smiled before the trigger was pulled. A few insisted there had been 2 guns. None of that mattered. What stayed intact was the shape of the story. A trusted man turned. A powerful man waited. And violence lost. That was rare. Today, Lenox Lounge no longer exists. But the lesson remains intact. Big Sam took money to betray his boss and lost everything that gave his life weight. Bumpy Johnson lost nothing because he never staked his power on trust alone. That night didn't make him king of Harlem. It confirmed something Harlem already knew. Power doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like patience. And sometimes, the most dangerous man in the room is the one who knows the end from the beginning. If this story got you locked in, do well to hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next thrilling story in history. Now tell me, would you have let Sam walk out alive, knowing what he tried to do?